All right. So basically, I'm looking to start backtesting, and what I'm looking at is the I've kind of seen a lot of people trading previous day's high and previous day's low, or sorry, yesterday's high, yesterday's low. But what I'm kind of thinking more along the lines of is because I trade London session, and I really liked the idea of the London basically just sort of being the low of the day. I'm basically going to go through and I'm going to back test what I'm calling previous day's range, or PDR, or you could call it yesterday's range, the YDR. And really with that, the key is in the name. So I'm going to be looking to trade the daily range using the ICT concepts, and the main ones that I'm going to be looking at are power of 3, kill zones, using standard deviations, and then the 2022 model in the 5 minute or less. So the basically sort of the rule of thumb is you can use standard deviations to get a really good plan, or at least from what I've looked at or what I've had on my chart. I've not necessarily used well, I have used them, but to no effect because I don't have any data on it. But what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to sort of anticipate where the potential low of the day could be along using PD arrays and standard deviations. So using those, I should be able to unlock basically the near the low and high of the day. And then it's just a matter of obviously sort of getting involved. So when I say I don't really want the meat, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at sort of, getting within sort of, if I'm looking at a 5 minute chart, perhaps 5 to 10 pips of the daily low. And then trying to get out and ride that range to around about 5 or 10 pips of the daily high. So that's the kind of like the idea. Where I've come up with the idea is basically that I've looked at my strengths in terms of what am I actually good at. And my daily bias is typically very good. I'm always disappointed that I don't hold trades long enough. I'm always disappointed that I've tried to take too many trades. So I'm really going to try and lean on the idea that I'm just going to try and take one trade a day and just try and sort of get the daily range when those conditions are present. So just to kind of run through this in brief. When bullish, expect price to trade to and through the previous day's high. So rather than sort of sitting there waiting for yesterday's high low, I'm anticipating price trading to it. That's not to say that we can't take a scalp once it does hit it, but for the moment, this is what I'm going to be looking to test. So the next bit is obviously anticipating the low of the day to form in London, buying below open price at midnight EST, using a 60 or 50 minute PD array, that being ideally it will be a fair value gap that's in the previous day's range within the upper 50%. But we can also use liquidity pools, and basically we're looking for them to align with standard deviations. So standard deviations they're not the panacea, they're not the that's not what's going to get me into the model. It's the understanding of the daily bias and then basically how far price can dip down in between. That's going to really help, after some backtesting, really help sort of pull in confidence and basically get me to near the low of the day. And then once we're in near the low of the day, I think this is really going to be the game changer for me, is actually being able to, looking to see how long I need to hold it. So with that being said, holding till London close and or opposing targets, so if we've got a standard deviation that's sitting just above the previous day's high, then I might look for that. And if it hits that in London, and London posts 80% of the day's range, that's amazing. Do you know what I mean? If it hits a target, if it's good enough risk reward, that's brilliant. Great. So, job done. The latest time, if there's still a standard deviation that I believe is going to be met, that I'll hold to, will be 2 p.m. EST, so the end of true day, basically. And then just a little note, basically, Asia should be visually consolidating. If there's any sort of trend or any sort of expansion in there, I will use Flout protocol. So Flout is I really struggled using CBDR. I've always sort of I have Asian range marked out on my charts with an indicator, and it always seems to give some sort of reasonable standard deviation that I can key off. Now, if the Asian range is in some sort of expansion or is a large range, so by large range, perhaps, kind of I'm saying anything sort of 20 pips or more, but I will find out with my testing, that what I should do then is, if we've already dropped below the Asian range and we come back down into it, then I should be using Flout. So Flout basically is similar to Asian range, except for now we're using a larger range and we're splitting that range into premium and discount. So we're now not expecting a run below. We can still get a run below using standard deviations, but if there's an expansion in London and then we come back down into less than 50%, these are bullish examples of Flout, then we're going to key off of a PD array in there. And then we're going to use the Flout projections to try and lock in some measure of high of the day. So, in terms of using the standard deviations, there's a fill in the numbers lesson. So basically, the total number of deviations should be equal to 4. That is basically, if it trades down 2, then expect 2 up. And if it trades down 1, then target 3 up. So, with that being said, and the reason why, so 2 down and 2 up, there was the ICT Market Maker course that's kind of floating around on Telegram and so on. I think it's 12 point something or whatever, where he goes through Flout. In that, he actually outlines protocols, and basically consolidation days, he says use 2 standard deviations of Flout. So it will go, in consolidation days, you should go 2 and 2. So that's where that sort of come from. And then in the later teachings, in the 2016-2017 mentorship, he's basically sort of says, oh, fill the numbers. So basically that's that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to look to collect 6 screenshots and basically outline the following. So the key thing, obviously, with this, if we're going to trade the daily range, is basically using daily bias. So daily bias is, obviously, I'm going to be using predominantly the last 20 days for intraday trading. But however, I will have the 20, 40, 60 cast back and look forward ranges on my chart, just because they help you see if you're in a premium, or a discount or a equilibrium relative to the last sort of 60 days, for example. I'm going to kind of have like a bit of market condition, so I'm going to outline, using my experience, whether we are in an expansion, a retracement phase, because obviously if we're trading intraday, we can trade retracements, so the daily can be bullish, but if we're in a retracement phase, then we want to be looking for shorts. If we're in a consolidation, so then again we'll come back to those sort of 2 up, 2 downs, and maybe we'll be looking for just sort of short-term targets, and the other thing is obviously a reversal. So that's kind of what I'll be trying to outline on the daily chart. And the main sort of thing is obviously going to be identifying the draw and liquidity. And then we've got previous day data points, which is something that I've been using. I mean, ICT has spoken about it before. I think he actually touched on it in the 2022 mentorship when he was talking about immediate rebalances. But what I like to do is, obviously, if we've got an efficient market, and there was another video, I think it's in the accumulation, manipulation, distribution, the AMD YouTube video, where he talks about, basically, as the daily candle prints, as it drops down into accumulation, so as it accumulates, then drops down to manipulation, as it distributes on the daily chart, we now have a dynamic imbalance. So that being that we've had the candle close near the high, so the dynamic imbalance is basically what was left between the day that's just printed and the previous day's candle high. If we don't get down to that, then obviously we create a fair value gap. If we do get down to it, then we have an immediate rebalance. So that'll probably be better explained with as I sort of go through and create different videos for the different back tests. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is obviously and the reason I'm looking for 6 screenshots is because I'm using EdgeWonk, and that's how many it allows you to do. So I'm trying to be organized in the amount of screenshots that I have. So to give me context, framework, and then basically be able to sort of scan through and obviously look at fills, exits, and so on and so on. But 60 and 50-minute PD arrays outlined at 2 AM London Open. So what I'm trying to mimic here is basically sitting down at London Open, or just ahead of London Open, having a quick look. Right, where are we? Where's midnight open? What's my standard deviation? Where are my fair value gaps in the previous day's range? Where are my liquidity pools in the previous day's range? What are my previous day data points? Was Asia consolidating? Example. Do you know what I mean? Are there any liquidity pools in New York session? Again, mark out the standard deviations. Have a little look at what news is available for the day, and then come up with an anticipated daily profile. Following that, then I'm going to be waiting for a setup to form. So ideally, this will form in London as a classic buy day where we drop below the open. I'm going to ring in the standard deviations, and then from there, basically, I'm going to be looking for a 5-minute market structure shift 2022 classic model. Perhaps I might need to drop down to lower. So in terms of when I'll drop down to lower, that will be probably worthwhile defining this actually now. So if I have a so basically this will be done. Right, so this will be done if I have, and this might be something that actually is kind of going to bridge the gap because I've noticed it happening a few times. If I have a change in state of delivery on the 5 and or 15-minute charts, I've noticed this happening quite a lot recently. So basically, I'll see like a let's just say, for example, a down candle, then a large up candle on the 15-minute chart. If at that point in time, if I then break down into the lower time frames, that will basically then give me the fair value gap that I need to be looking at. So I will only go lower basically if I have a change of state of delivery on the 5-minute with no fair value gap, basically. So what I'm saying there is, basically, if we get probably the easiest way to say it is, if I get an engulfing candle but there's no fair value gap and it looks about right, typically you'll be able to find a fair value gap. I'm going to be using the 1-minute chart. Just because I don't really want to be sort of having 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just to scale down to. I'm going to try and keep it simple. Then I'll screenshot the fill. So once we've got the setup, basically, if I get a fill, and then if I don't get a fill, I'm going to need to screenshot that as well. I will have rewinding available. So if I do need to go through and rewind, then. But basically, I'm going to be using institutional order flow entry drill on 1 minute, and I'm going to be using 50 minutes on 5 minutes. So that's probably worth outlining as well. So the entry criteria will be so CE of 5-minute fair value gaps, and institutional order flow entry drill on sub 5 minutes. What is happening here? On sub 5-minute chart. And the reason I'm saying sub 5-minute, even though I've just said that I'm only going to use the 1, is because obviously if I do some more testing and I find out that the 2-minute or 3-minute becomes good, then that's fine. And then the next thing is obviously going to be exit, stop loss, or TP. And then from there, basically, that will give me the results. So I'm gathering data at the moment. After that, we're going to look for a full markup. So this is going to include power of 3 outlined on the 15-minute chart, standard deviations, maximum reverse excursion with drawdown pips and time annotated, maximum favourable excursion, pips and hold time. Obviously, we know the reason for this is basically that we can't get the drawdown pips and times. We don't see that on EdgeWonk. So I can import the data, but I won't get this stuff. So I won't get the maximum reverse excursion. And the maximum favourable excursion, I can put that in as a number. But what I asked for not too long ago, I made a suggestion, was basically if we can to look to improve. So before we start making stop losses tighter and things like that for looking to, for, you know, up draw and whatever, it would be interesting to know if your maximum favourable excursion is all the time an average of 10 pips. Just because it means 10 pips doesn't mean say you put your target at 10 pips, because that 10 pips might be after a significant retracement of, let's say, 15 pips, and then it goes through again. So in which case, do I really want to be, you know, kind of like, do I want to be holding on for an extra 10 pips if I have to sit through another retracement? That leads me on to the, and also, so the hold time will be different. You know, if the extra hold time is always, I just need to hold on for 15 minutes longer, then great. Do you know what I mean? If the hold time is on average sort of 2 hours longer, then it's probably not worth my sort of patience to sit there, I don't believe. But we will look at that data when we have it. And then in line with that, basically I'm looking at significant retracements. So typically I will, my issues are, because I understand that price sort of raid stops, then expands, then retraces as a new candle opens. What I would sort of anticipate is after a large candle, I would be like, oh my god, I don't want it to come down and fill the inefficiency. I just want to take the profit that's been gained. So the idea is basically, if I can understand that there are 2 or 3 significant retracements, we think in terms of a market maker model, for example, 2 or 3 sort of significant retracements, then at least that way I know to expect that. Obviously drop on some news and then outline the actual daily profile. So in terms of basically what I'm looking at, you know, there's a few things on here as well, indicators and drawing tools that I'm going to use, but they'll be sort of used in the video. So that's kind of the idea, and then I'm just going to switch over to, at the moment I've got FX replay on. So really this is kind of going to what the result is going to be. So we'll have the standard deviations marked out. So here we have Asia in this actual instance. Let's just do this quickly. So we've got previous day's high. So we're bullish at the moment for this example. So I'm not expecting price to take previous day's low, because we've traded through previous day's high. So here, if we don't take out previous day's low, then it's fair to assume that we're going to do this. This is December, because I'm going to start from January. But so for this instance, we can see here that basically there is, we've dropped quite aggressively before London Open. So in that respect, what I'm using for this is I'm using Flout. So that is basically the range up to 2 p.m, the high to the low for midnight open. And we can see here that this is a good example of Flout protocol. So now we use 0.5 over here, and then as we trade through this, we basically have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So basically, as we trade through this 50%, this is our 1 basically. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. No. It has to come through the middle. So this is 1 here, 2, 3 would obviously be the 50% of this, and 4. And then obviously London, we don't get the fill to New York, so this isn't the best example. But and then we've obviously got power 3 marked out. This is the so with the standard deviation, this is the amount of updraw that we've got, 0.7, so 7.5 pips. I've just marked out there's 10 pips above the high over here, so that's reasonable to expect. Then we've got over here as well, so 8 bars, 2 hours. So basically, how much longer I would have needed to hold to get to the high of the day. I believe that's, oh no. So yeah, basically an extra hour and 45 minutes for an extra 7.5 pips. Is it worth it? And then I want to look at time and drawdown. So 4 pips of drawdown. This is a 15-minute chart, so I've just moved this up a little bit. So yeah, 4 pips of drawdown and basically 15 minutes, so 1 candle of extra hold time. Another example over here, so we've got Asian range, basically price drops down, hits a half, and then from there we go up 3 point, so we would go 0.5, and then basically when we concentrate above here we go 1, 2, 3, and then in this instance we would go for 3.5, and so we'll drop one of them on there, and obviously I'll tidy these up as I go, but I'll just keep them on there. So 3.5, and then we get out kind of close to the day, although there's actually no entry in here. In fact, let's just quickly drop down and just have a little look, just to see if we can define the model a little bit better over here. So, right, London. Okay, so we are anticipating, basically, so we've had this, a market structure shift on the 5-minute chart, large range overnight. So you come down into a fair value gap. Basically, we're holding the, we've already traded down a little bit on the new day open, not midnight. And then where have we got over here? So let's do midnight open. Midnight open is this one. And we'll roll that over to here. So basically we're trading down below here, and then we see I'm imagining over here that we've got some SMT with GU, for example. I can't test that at the moment. So in this instance, we have a failure swing. Basically in the London Open, we've basically nailed half a deviation. So the difference between that is, see, from here to here, so 1 pip, that's negligible, I can deal with that. So what I'm looking at now is basically, obviously we've traded here, a failure swing, and then we've traded above this high here. And this is kind of going to go into the 1 minute, 1 minute stuff. So we have a market structure shift, and now I can look at this range basically from low to high, and in that range I'm looking for, and I need to save myself a 50% template, but basically what I'm going to do is I just need to do this now. No, I can't do it now, it's ruined the video. So basically what I'm looking for now is I'm looking for anything in this range over here that constitute a fair value gap. So let's roll back, and we need to have a look at it in the sense that, so basically price has broken this high, there's a fair value gap. Okay, is that significant enough? Even if it isn't, okay, we trade through this. Where's can't see where the range is taken from the high to the low. Bear with me one moment. This is getting awful messy, this video. Visibility. Right, so at this, basically once this here breaks, because we've seen that traded through significantly now, so now we'll go back to this. Apologies, this is not very good in terms of video, but I'm not very good at editing either. So okay, so we could take this entry because we come over here, we break the market structure shift over here. We've respected a fair value gap, order flow is bullish, regardless of whether we do or not. Now, basically, price comes down into here. We don't have a fair value gap to work off unless we use the same one again, or we can wait for the 2022 model to appear again, and that would look something like this for me. So here to here. So a low, a high, a low, a low, a high, a high. And there's another high basically in there. Market structure shift, fair value gap. Basically, we're not fucking about. We know which way we want to go. 1 minute we go institutional order flow entry drill. Stop will go below here or below here. 5 pips, reasonable. And then from here we're going to shoot back up to the 5-minute chart, and our target will be as outlined before. So we're going to go 1 down, and then we got to it was 3.5, I think it was. Basically be holding on till the end of the day. So 3.5 was what we'd done, and that is 14 to 1, and that seems absolutely ridiculous. But we are holding, this falls outside of the close time, apart from the fact that we do go up to 2 o'clock. So I mean, that's good. We don't reach 3 until here, which is 12:30. So it may be the case that at 12 o'clock, basically, we adjust our stop target down to here, and that still would give us a 12 to 1 risk reward ratio. So with that all in mind, that's kind of what I'm looking at. That's how I'm going to pan it out, and then it's just going to be a case of really just sort of sitting down and just trying to nail down. So the idea is going to be to video each trade in terms of as I'm sort of marking it out, talk through, do the narrative, and then do the markups and save those. So yes, basically that is the idea, and that's kind of what I'm hoping to achieve from this. So basically, I suppose I best just crack on with it and start collecting some data and basically recording the results, making sure that it's all good. Alrighty, peace out.